Lost and Found by Oliver Jeffers. Read by Paul McGann. Dedicated to Rory, Peter and Brian. Once there was a boy, and one sunny morning he opened his door to find a penguin standing there on his front step.
Hello, who are you?
The boy didn't know where it had come from, or where it was going, as it didn't say much. But everywhere he went, the penguin followed, just a couple of steps behind him. The penguin looked sad, and the boy thought it must be lost. So the boy decided to help the penguin find its way home. Except he wasn't sure where that was. He checked in the Lost and Found office.
Dear me, no missing penguins have been reported here. No.
He asked some birds he found outside if they knew where the penguin had come from. But they simply ignored him and carried on about their business. Some birds are just like that. That night, at bath time, the boy asked his toy duck. But the duck just floated away. After his bath, the boy stayed awake thinking, late into the night. He couldn't sleep for disappointment, as he wanted to help the penguin, but he didn't know how. The next morning, he had an idea and pulled a big red book down from the shelf. He was pleased to discover that penguins come from the South Pole. Now, how could he get the penguin back there? He ran down to the harbour, with the penguin not far behind. They found a huge red ship docked up by the lighthouse at the end of the pier. The boy asked the ship if they could be taken to the South Pole, but his voice was too small and couldn't be heard over the ship's horn. Together they walked back to the boy's house and decided they would row to the South Pole themselves. The boy took his rowboat out of the cupboard and they tested it for size and strength. They packed a small brown suitcase with all the things that they would need: a hat if it got too cold, a torch if it got too dark, and an umbrella, just in case. Together they brought the rowboat down to the beach, put the oars and the suitcase into it, and together they pushed it out past the waves and out to sea. They floated out of the harbour, past the bigger boats, and went to find South. Along they rowed for many days and many nights. The boy told stories to pass the time, as they looked at the water around them and the stars above them. The penguin quietly listened to every story the boy told. They mostly rowed through good weather, but one night, the driving rain began to fall, the howling wind began to blow, and an angry storm came. Their boat was tossed about on waves as big as mountains. But the boy rowed on, and the penguin used the torch to light their way in the dark. They finally came to the South Pole and pulled the boat up to the ice. The boy was delighted, but the penguin said nothing. Suddenly it looked sad again as the boy helped it out of the boat. The boy had finally brought the penguin home. He said goodbye, and he climbed back into the boat. With one last wave, he floated away.
Goodbye.
But as he looked back, the penguin looked sadder than ever. The boy began his long journey home, and it felt a bit strange to be on his own. The more he thought, the more he realized that something wasn't quite right. And the more he realized he felt alone, the more he realized he was making a big mistake. The penguin hadn't been lost at all. He'd just been lonely. Quickly, he turned the boat around and started rowing as fast as he could, back past the icebergs and back towards the South Pole. He needed to find the penguin again. When he got back to the pole, he searched and searched for the penguin. He checked behind the sign. He shouted at the top of his voice, and even used a telescope. But the penguin was nowhere to be found. After looking all over the South Pole, the boy finally climbed back into his boat and sadly set off for home for the last time. There was no point in telling stories, because there was no one to listen except the wind and the waves. But then, as the boy rowed toward home again, he saw something in the water ahead of him. He wasn't sure what it could be. He rowed and rowed, faster and faster, so he could catch up to see what it was. Closer and closer he got, until he could see the penguin. He hadn't wanted to be back at the South Pole alone, so he had used the spare oar and the umbrella as a boat and tried to follow the boy. The two now gave each other an incredibly big hug. The penguin climbed back into the boy's boat, and the two friends travelled back home together. Along they floated on the beautiful blue sea, talking of wonderful things all the way.
Make sure your child is reading and spelling accurately with the Fat Cat Phonics program. Make learning phonics easy and fun with the virtual teacher, which allows your child to learn along with me. A, N, T, ant. Complete various exercises. Ant. And read unique stories written by myself. Ant and Fat Cat. An ant is in ink. They're designed to be easily read in the early stages of their reading and will build up your child's confidence. Also, make the end of the lesson revision fun with one of the phonics games. Ant. Download some free lessons now at fatcatbooks.uk.